Hey guys, it's me, Buster Green, and I'm finally out of the getaway cauldron, which I've been trapped in for a few months. Now, since I'm out, I wanted to touch on another anime that I've been watching this past year, and that is God Mazinger. Now, I need to preface this video with the fact that for a period of roughly the past 30 to 40 years, the series was considered to be lost media. I'll go more into that story later, but that's going to make this video really hard to put together because I'm not going to have a lot of pictures to work with visually. I don't know, maybe I'll draw something. Now, as much as I love Getter Robo, I appreciate a good Mazinger series just as much, if not more. Especially if it's a great Mazinger series. Haha, see what I did there? Alright, anyway. So, in my life, Mazinkaiser has pretty much been the best standalone Mazinger series. There was also Shin Mazinger Impact Hen, which was a really stylish attempt at doing Mazinger justice. I love that series, it had a lot of cool moments, but I think it really missed its ending in the end, and it did like a belly flop trying to execute a bad time loop. Now, as much as Getter Robo has seen its bad share of weird spin-offs, Mazinger is equally as guilty, if not more, because, let's face it, Uncle Go needs to pay his rent sometimes. And when he does need to pay his rent, he does a funky reboot of Mazinger, just to see if he'll stick to the wall or not. Hence you have your ancient Greek Mazinger, your American hardcore fantasy Mazinger, and your infamous Charlie's Angels Mazinger ripoff. Now, in between all these famous Mazingers and your weird spin-off Mazingers, there is one infamous Mazinger that drops right in between the center of those, and that is God Mazinger. So, backstory here. Pre-2021, I have known about God Mazinger for years. I've known the story that it's a God Mazinger, it's a weird Mazinger where the Mazinger is a literal god and also a statue of a god that somehow comes to life. But whereas the original 70s Mazinger and Great Mazinger were out there for me to get, albeit with bad Taiwanese or Bolivian subtitles, see, it was difficult to get the old Mazinger series in English, but you could do it. But you couldn't get God Mazinger at all. God Mazinger was special because it was just straight up lost media, and therefore no one knew about it. There was very little information about it outside of like what people knew from Japan and like remembered, like because this was pre-internet, and therefore I had no hope of watching it, and it was just kind of a mystery. So I had to put it in this weird category in my brain, whereas like, yeah, I could wait my entire life, and eventually there would be DVD releases of the original Mazinger series, which I still haven't got around to buying or watching, but I feel better knowing I can. God Mazinger, meanwhile, was just gone. No one knew where it went to, no one ever seen it, and so it just had this mystique of, why was it missing? What happened to it? Who lost it? So anyway, God Mazinger is usually paired up with Getter Robo Go as the weird super robot spin-off from the late 80s, early 90s that threw the baby out with the bathwater and really did not work because it deviated too much from what made the original franchise work in the first place. Now, as time went on, God Mazinger became more and more of a lost media mystery, and I had just given up hope on finding it. I knew the manga was out there, but I'd read a few of the earlier Mazinger mangas, and the Mazinger mangas, they pretty much just give you an idea of what the show is like, and then they end like just as soon as they started. All that changed earlier this year when a friend of mine let me use his Funimation subscription. And by God, what did I find at the bottom of the Funimation channel? In the bottom of that dark streaming barrel? Literally the entire 1980s run of God Mazinger. Well, goddamn. It was lost media no more. Or was it? Well, sort of both. Alright, so God Mazinger is a brutally weird show. It's honestly not a good show. It has raw elements that seem like they should work and that should be good on their own, but just something about the show never works out right. So I'm going to preface this review with the fact that this show was only available subbed on the Funimation channel, and I really didn't like it. So even though I watched the whole thing, I watched it like one episode a week for the past couple months. And now that I'm reviewing it, I might not be recalling all the details 100% accurately, so take that with a grain of salt. Anyway, the show suffers from pre-80s anime syndrome, which is extra sad because the show came out in the middle of the 80s. which means that it has a few good episodes to start out with, a few standout episodes in the middle, but by and large, 80% of this anime just completely drags and has these cookie-cutter repeat episodes and repeat plots until finally, around the end of the show, it goes into panic mode, tries to wrap everything else up, and the last few episodes are actually good because the story has finally been emboldened and now they're trying to be creative. So anyway, God Mazinger. The story is that it starts off in the prehistoric kingdom of Mu in another dimension. Mu is at war with the enemy kingdom of El Dorado. El Dorado has dinosaurs, literally mechasauruses straight out of 70s Ghetto Robo. So that gives them a pretty brutal edge in this pretty one-sided war. Now, Mu is defended by these noble warriors 3, who appear by all accounts to be the same warriors 3 from the Thor movie. They're generically good at fighting, but they're just stereotypical warrior dudes. They're strong enough to matter to the story, but not enough to matter to any of the characters with dialogue. And as soon as Mazinger comes onto the scene, they're made irrelevant and they're instant background characters, and they just don't matter anymore. Anyway, so that wasn't working, and to make matters worse, the Prince of El Dorado that decides, since he's obviously winning this war, he will end the war by marrying the Princess of Mu, declaring a peace treaty, and that should be an open and shut case, because if, the two royal teams just married it out, there would be instant world peace with 0 deaths. But unfortunately, the Mu princess can't really stand that. Now, she isn't that much of a looker herself, but she just decides that she doesn't like this dude, she can do better. And so she uses her dark magic to summon up a Japanese rugby player from a normal life in 1984. This dude is named Yamato Hino, and he is spirited away to the Kingdom of Mu to be the lover, protector of this Princess Ira and the pilot of the mighty God Mazinger. Side note, I have not read the manga, but I'm being told right now that they have a lot of sex in the manga. So Yamato gets all spirited away to Mu in the first ever isekai anime ever made. Oh wait, no, that's Denbine. So anyway, seemingly Yamato is very okay with this arrangement because he gets to be a hero, he gets to pilot a giant robot statue, and he's seemingly set up very well off to marry a princess and rule over a kingdom of uneducated warrior cavemen. Now, his only real regret in this whole arrangement is that he misses his beloved little sister. So a few episodes into the series, Ira decides to make him happy by isekaiing his little sister to Mu too. So now they both get to live there and play with rocks and not get eaten by dinosaurs, because again, this is a prehistoric society. Now, I assume his parents also have to reckon with the sad reality that both of their children have vanished without a trace to never return. So, that's pretty dark. I bet you didn't think about that. Anyway, so Yamato is given the God Mazinger. The God Mazinger honestly makes no sense in the series. It starts out as a giant statue. It's the god of the people of Mu that they worship. But then once Yamato touches it, it comes to life. And then when it's not being used, it turns into a statue again. But when it is being used, it's potentially a living being. Now, the opening titles and several lines of dialogue seem to suggest God Mazinger is just a giant super robot, but it does have a consciousness, and it does say things. It has its own inner voice. It talks in this really stereotypical Autobot robot voice, but then every once in a while, when it gets really, really pissed off, it whips out these like vampire devilman fangs. So that kind of implies that it's fully organically alive in a very much pre-Evangelion, but still Evangelion sort of way. Now, anyway, from here on out, the show gets into this really, really bland slog of like repeat filler episodes. Every episode, the El Dorados pick a general to go out and enact a scheme. The scheme is a scheme to either kidnap the Princess Ira, or kill Mazinger with a Megasaurus, or do both. Usually something will happen, it'll go bad, and then either the general will escape, or if it's been like 5 episodes of the same general, Mazinger will kill that general and a new one will be picked to replace them. And the whole middle of the show sucks. There was only one good standout episode in the middle of the show where the Prince of El Dorado gets captured, and then they kind of focus on him for a beat. and then he ends up escaping being captured by lying to a bunch of guys, and then immediately murdering the guys he's lied to once he's free. That was the only episode that broke the Monster of the Day pattern that all the other episodes were into. But yeah, this anime was pretty goddamn bad, if I'm being honest, for the most part. Like, it really does turn around in the last 4 or 5 episodes, where end of anime panic mode sets in. So in the last couple of episodes, there are finally some dramatic plot twists. The Princess of Mu gets kidnapped for the 20th time in the series, but this time something goes horribly wrong, and Yamato actually gets violently killed trying to get her back. And the whole thing straight up massively traumatizes her, and she spends some time dragging around Yamato's rotting corpse. And he's drawn in such a way that he looks incredibly dead, obviously rotting, and it's massively disturbing for a kid's 80s anime. Anyway, she eventually comes to terms with his death, and so she begrudgingly agrees to marry the Prince of El Dorado to stop this whole charade and end all the killing. Anyway, I want to say after that, Yamato stays dead for a whole episode, but then God Mazinger, because it's a self-aware, self-thinking god, decides to sacrifice its life to bring Yamato back to life. And then immediately after coming back to life, Yamato destroys Ira and El Dorado's wedding and steals the super god-level treasure called the Light Bearer from El Dorado, which he immediately uses to wish God Mazinger back to life and restore the status quo. Now, after that, he and El Dorado fight again. El Dorado loses, and I think Princess Mu declares that she wants to marry Yamato since he's alive again. And that's how the show ends. Now, despite being an ending, that's also a cliffhanger, because El Dorado's not entirely finished off. You don't know if Yamato is actually going to accept marrying Ira. Maybe he will, maybe he'll get her teen pregnant, and maybe he'll rule over this kingdom of cavemen. Remember what I was saying about the show being lost media? So there's actually a lot more to that story. So as it turns out, I was misled slightly. The whole show isn't lost media. But what is actually lost media is the last episode, episode 24. That's the lost media. See, this show ends on a really awkward odd number 23. Most animes end on 12 or 24. Occasionally we get a 13 or a 26. But yeah, this one ends on 23. Now, the last episode is a decent enough last episode that you can make up your own ending, but apparently there was actually a 24th episode of the show. The 24th episode is the lost episode. The title of the episode is called Mazinger Disappears into the Sea, so it's safe to assume that in this last episode, Mazinger would walk off into the ocean triumphantly like Godzilla. The only real mystery is whether Yamato chose to accept Ira's proposal of marriage and live on as the beautiful King of Mu with his slutty curly-haired caveman wife, or accompany his kid sister back to modern-day Japan, experience the financial crash, and probably work in a convenience store for the rest of his life. Now, based on the way the show was going, I think it's actually a lot better it ended where it did, because that leaves the possibility that anything could have happened. And if I'm being real, my gut tells me that just based on other shows in this time period, he probably would have made the weaker choice to go back to Japan. And in my mind, that would have been a bad ending. So at least the ending we got is optimistically happy. So meanwhile, what happened to the last episode? Why is it lost? And why did it lead to the whole series getting lost? Okay, so as it turns out, the last episode was supposed to air in the summer of 1984. And you know what else happened in the summer of 1984? The goddamn Olympics. The Summer Olympics of 1984 ran long on one Sunday day, and instead of airing the last episode of God Mazinger, they aired more Olympics. And then because the people in the 1980s were just a little bit uncoordinated and they didn't have internet, the last episode of God Mazinger was completely lost to time, never aired on TV, never recorded to VHS, just straight up gone. All the people who worked on it got nothing. Now, to make matters worse, since the whole show is very bland and uninspiring and pretty generic, topping off that black eye of losing the last episode just made this whole show kind of rub fans the wrong way, and so the whole thing kind of fell into obscurity. A lot of people just did not care about God Mazinger because if you watched it, you kind of knew it sucked, and you kind of knew it had no ending. And so anyone who'd seen it already didn't care, and anyone who hadn't seen it didn't care either. So apart from the last episode, the rest of the series just became hard to find all this time because it straight up was not a good series and people did not care. So yeah. Also, I just found out literally this second that I thought God Mazinger came out before Or a Battler Dunbine. So I was going to give it a lot more credit. But now that I'm looking into it, I am realizing that Dunbine came out a year ahead of the show. It literally started airing a few months after Dunbine finished airing, which makes me actually way more ashamed of the show. Now, Dunbine is a masterpiece of the isekai genre, which really revived isekais for other animes. And to think that God Mazinger would be such a lazy follow-up to Dunbine really makes me respect the show a lot less all of a sudden. Dunbine is a weird show, but in my mind, it is a perfect blend of everything that's good about the isekai genre, the best parts of Lord of the Rings, the best parts of Gundam, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and Irish mythology, and just some otherworldly shit that makes it come out as a perfect storm of good anime fantasy. Now, back to God Mazinger. Another pot shot I need to take at the show is the opening and ending are extra strange on a really bad level. Now, a few months ago, a friend of mine was talking to me, and randomly it came up, has there ever been an anime with a really terrible opening theme song? And to which I answered him, yeah, God Mazinger. The theme song to God Mazinger is a song called Dreamy My Love. And I think the lyrics just kind of like encapsulate Princess Ira's whole point of view that she called down this champion from the 80s to defend her from dinosaurs. But I don't know, it feels so corny and so cheesy that it's like a song you'd see in like an 80s McDonald's commercial. It's not meant for an ass-kicking super robot show. It's more like a song from like a rom-com or like an anime about a girl who's like sad. Like, making the opening even worse is that the opening credits are literally just a slow montage of the God Mazinger robot, some waves, and a broken digital clock. It looks jank as hell, like some bad student film. It feels like the cheapest thing they could possibly put together. And again, dances vaguely around the concept of whether God Mazinger is actually a robot or actually a god. The ending is just as bad, if not worse. It's literally just Ira and Yamato running in front of a photograph of a keyboard. It feels thematically connected to the opening because it's just as lazy, but again, it sucks. Probably the only nice thing I can say about the show is Go Nagai did write the story for it, and Kentaro Haneda did do the music for it. Kentaro Haneda usually does really good soundtracks, but nothing here really stood out like some of his other better shows. So yeah, other than that, again, the best thing I can say about the show is something I was trying to construe in the beginning. The concept for the show is decent. The fact Yamato is a modern man summoned to an ancient kingdom to be a tool/lover for its powerful but basic curly-haired caveman princess is like a unique concept, especially since modern isekai anime have really like degenerated to be like basically all about sex, where usually like some modern guys just being sleazy, trying to take advantage of all these like uneducated isekai land cavemen women. So at least here it's like the other way around. I guess the lesson in most modern isekais are if you're a loser otaku, you should go to a country where you're slightly above average and maybe you'll get laid. Whereas here, the Moo Princess at least had her own sexual agency and was kind of the steering force for the center of the show. So, in conclusion, God Mazinger gets a super bad 2 out of 10. The only thing I can say good about it was the basic concept was alright, because it did a few unique things with the isekai genre. But it loses massive points for having dozens of throwaway, underdeveloped characters. Like, literally, there are dozens of characters in the show that just pop up, do a thing, and they die, or they stay alive the whole series, and I literally can't tell you what their names were, what they did, why it mattered. Like, the only characters in the story that have, like, any, like, plot progression at all are Iramu, the Prince of El Dorado, Yamato, and barely Yamato's sister, who is really just there to make Yamato, like, less freaked out that he's in a caveman world. Like, there are just dozens of repetitive, plotless episodes. It's like the princess is in another castle, you know? Like, it's just mindlessness. And they never clarify any of the story elements that are important. Like, they're trying to get this magical treasure, but you don't know why. I still don't get if God Mazinger was a god or a robot or both. And the final insult to the injury was that the last episode was destroyed by the goddamn Olympics. So, if you really, really want to punish yourself and watch the show, it's easy to find it on the Funimation channel. I would say that you should probably watch the first few episodes to see if you can stomach it, and then as soon as Yamato gets Ira to summon his sister to Mu, just skip ahead to the last 5 episodes. You'll be saving yourself so many hours of filler episodes where the same shit happens over and over again. It's just like hours of God Mazinger running around making angry vampire faces at pterodactyls. Hey guys, quick addendum because I wasn't sure this would spill into another video or not. Since this video took me so long to finish and this anime was so weird and frustrating, it left me deeply unsatisfying in such a way that I finally buckled down and took the extra time to read the manga. Now, in this case, the manga is fucking insane. It's classic Go Nagai, hard sci-fi fantasy stuff, but it has this extra level of crass and depravity that I really wasn't ready for. The manga gave me a lot of the answers that the anime didn't, but also vice versa. There were some things that the anime answered that the manga didn't. The manga speeds through the story and leaves a lot of concepts kind of unrealized and sidelined as it goes along. So I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't gonna read the manga at first, but then I glanced at the first few pages and the manga sucked me in with a pretty shocking parade of naked women. In the manga, the Kingdom of Mu is just full of constantly naked women that never wear clothes. They might wear battle armor into a fight, but you see non-stop uncensored lady parts on just about every page of this book. Somehow, as bad as the anime was, the manga is good while doing the same shit, just doing it competently. So, goddamn, I kind of wish there had been a movie of the manga. If you want to read the manga, if you want to see this concept done right, just a warning ahead, it's completely full of naked women, there's a lot of sexual assault, a lot of murder, and at a certain point they touch on some really cringy racial stuff that's very, very offensive by modern standards. Especially if you're black, and especially if you're Asian, which is kind of funny because this was written by Japanese people, but, you know, standards have changed. Anyway, let me know if you guys want me to cover the manga. I'll think about it. I'm Ian Buster Green, and I still need 300 subscribers. I don't know what I'm going to do next, but wow, I ranted for 20 minutes about God Mazinger, so that's something. Alright, see you guys next time. Later.